Cold pizza like Tuesday.
2, 1.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I got food.
Yeah. That's one way to start. Welcome everybody to ADHD Pizza. My name is Sam, and this is Riley, or as we like to call him right now, Morning Riley.
Yeah, I got that scratchy morning voice.
Welcome everybody. ADHD Pizza is a podcast where rabbit trails are a part of the podcast. And I think today's topic is quite possibly the quintessential. It's the one, you know?
Yeah.
It's what we're here for. So before we get started, Riley is going to start today. But I just wanted to make a quick disclaimer that this is more for fun than it is for anything. We're not doctors, and even if we were, we couldn't do this ourselves. So we're just kind of doing it for fun. And once we get into it, we'll probably have some more conversations on our history and past as far as things go. But Riley, why don't you go ahead and get us started, sir?
Well, this morning, there is a fly right on the camera.
I see that. It might be in the shot. If it is, I'm leaving it in. I don't care. It's hilarious.
Is it like the fly that's on during the presidential race?
The one that flew in his mouth?
No, the one that was on the screen or whatever.
Oh, really? I didn't know about that. There was a presidential election, or there was a debate where I think a fly flew in Biden's mouth.
I think it was something like that.
Yeah, it just went right in.
It was Pence.
Oh, yeah, it was Pence. You're right.
Pence. Anyways. This morning I'm going over the five criteria for diagnosing ADHD.
And like we said, we are not doctors.
I just walked right
It's just
over the
there.
side of the camera.
You know what? It's going to add a nice little filter because he's not direct. Oh, he's right on it now. Nope.
Son of a biscuit. All right. Off.
It's there we go. He's going to come right back. There we go. All right. Get us started, boy. Let's go.
Sit down. He's back on top of the phone.
Yeah.
It's like that camera was getting a good shot of me, bro.
that was my best side.
Oh.
There he is.
All right. So, after reading the symptoms of ADHD, everything makes 10 times more sense. Okay. So, 5 criteria for ADHD. People with ADHD show a persistent pattern of inattention and or hyperactivity/impulsivity that infers with functioning or development. 6 or more symptoms, this is for inattention.
Okay.
6 or more symptoms for inattention for children up to age 16, or 5 or more for adolescents age 17 and older, and adults.
Okay, so it's actually there's more symptoms needed for kids than there is adults.
Oh wait, no, I read it wrong. For adolescents, or 5 or more for adolescents age 17 and older, and adults, symptoms of inattention have been present for at least 6 months. Oh no, I did read that right.
Okay, so it is easier not necessarily easier, but there's more criteria for kids than there is for adults.
Yeah, because I think they have that kid factor of kids being just generally crazy.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
And it says that has to be present for at least 6 months, and they are inappropriate for developmental level.
Inappropriate for a developmental level. So I'm guessing they mean
more than a normal kid.
Oh, I see. So inattention would have to be more than what's normally present.
Yeah, as people grow up, because
gotcha.
Kids are kids.
Yeah. I was like, I didn't think ADHD had anything to do with learning disabilities or anything.
Well, I don't know. It might be.
Okay.
It was a pain in the ass growing up.
I mean, yeah.
Through public school.
That's true. Were you one of those people that waited to, when a test was coming up, you waited till the night before and just did, a cramming session?
No. To the period of the last 5 minutes. It's like, take your last looks at the book. And I went, time to look at this stuff for the first time.
And you just hoped that you were paying enough attention in class.
I usually got pretty good grades.
Yep, same.
And if I'd studied before, I'd forget it. Mm-hmm. Anyways.
Yeah, that was me too.
And
But I was homeschooled, so it didn't matter. Like, I could just go look at the book and wait till mom wasn't paying attention and then just, oh, this is good. He's back.
Anyways, the fly is back right in front of the camera. Anyways, for adults, we need... Here, I'll do a little tally on here.
Okay.
We got Sam and Riley.
How many signs of ADHD does that line have?
How many options?
How many? No. This
Simple.
line right here. Is he ADHD too?
Riley is definitely ADHD.
No. The line in between our names.
Yes. Yes.
It's a lot of dead air.
So we got inattention, and then we got hyperactivity slash...
Everybody, for the audio podcast listener, Riley is writing us a little like cheat sheet, like a we're gonna do a rating and see who tallies up at the end. Let's play a game. Who's more ADHD?
Oh, I guarantee I'm higher.
Yeah, probably. I guess I don't really know like the difference between ADD and ADHD.
Oh, we can look that up.
We should look that up.
Okay, so for inattention, the first symptom often fails to give close attention or to details, or makes careless mistakes in schoolwork, at work, or with other activities.
I would not say that's typically me.
Okay.
I feel like when I get set on a task, I do okay. So mine is more like the way that I process is I bounce around from thing to thing really easily, but I focus on that thing fairly easily, if that makes sense.
Like hyperfocus.
Yeah.
Often has trouble holding attention on tasks or play activities.
It depends on what it is. Depends on how interested I am in it.
Definitely me.
Yeah.
We're at 2-0. I'm at 2. I think there's like 9 options here. Often does not seem to listen when spoken to directly. Is that you, Sam? You just don't want to admit it? Because I definitely blank out all the time when people are talking to me, and I'm like, what?
Not really. At least not initially. I feel like as the course of the conversation goes on, I'm more easily distracted. But initially, no, I'm paying perfect attention to everybody.
Gotcha. That's why it says holding attention. Or wait, no. Oh, no. Sorry. That was the one before.
Oh.
My bad.
Oops.
Often does not follow through on instructions and fails to finish schoolwork, chores, duties on the workplace. Sam finally has one, and Riley makes 4.
You should see the way that I clean my house. It's a mess. So I will save everything for one time frame, right? Mm-hmm. So the house will continually build up like typical duties like laundry and dishes and standard cleaning and things like that, and I'll do it all in one.
Just a little bit,
right. If I do a little bit, it feels like I hadn't got anything done, and I don't feel accomplished. So I save it all for one time, but I don't do it consistently of any. Like I don't finish the dishes and then I finish the laundry and then I finish cleaning. I will do a little bit of the dishes. I'll go put a little laundry in. I'll clean up a little bit. I'll come back to the dishes.
Your own worst enemy.
Yeah.
Like I'm waiting to save this up, but I'm gonna do it anyway. But I'm not gonna follow through.
And then there's always like, oh, and then I'm gonna play a round of Warzone and finish this episode of whatever I'm watching in between all of that. So it takes like twice as long as it should. It's a mess.
Especially, it was the worst for me for reading.
Oh, shoot.
Dude, I'd get like halfway through a page, and I'm like...
What did they say again?
That period looks really sharp. And then I'm like, what did I just read for the past full page? And like, it wasn't just like normal like chapter books. It was like textbooks and shit too.
Yeah, all the time.
I'm like, I gotta start back on the top of this full sheet of paper.
And I already dislike reading enough that it's like, you're telling me I gotta go back 3 paragraphs because I got something in my head
and forgot what I was doing.
Can't pay attention.
And
yeah,
my eyes were still scrolling across the words,
and I didn't retain any of the information.
It's like, that's pretty neat.
Yep, that was me in school.
Yep.
So it's why I don't really read books anymore.
That's why I listen to audiobooks.
I could never get into them.
Dude, it was 10 out of 10. Recommend.
I'll have to. I really should give it a try, but
especially during work is the best time.
But I have to choose like the podcasts I listen to as well, of like podcasts that I can dip in and out of and still retain the information. So
that's why I've listened to the Harry Potter series 4 times through.
It's like I already know what's going to happen every time.
It's still just as good listening to it
right
4th time through.
Right.
Okay, I'm back on track.
Our conversation about ADD and ADHD has ADD and ADHD.
Often has trouble organizing tasks and activities.
What I literally just said.
Bing. Bing.
Briley is at 5, everybody.
I'm already diagnosed. This is not good.
This is not the diagnosis.
This is off the CDC website, not necessarily like...
Yeah, like
all the symptoms, but this is what the CDC has.
Let's put it out here. You have to go to a proper doctor to get diagnosed with this.
This is just a list of symptoms.
This is just a list of symptoms. This is basically the same as looking up WebMD.
Yeah, like
symptoms.
Your elbow hurts. You're gonna die.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So, often avoids, dislikes, or reluctant to do tasks that require mental effort over a long period of time, such as schoolwork or homework.
Yes.
Ding. Ding.
There we go.
We're at 3-6 right now. I'm winning. But am I really?
Is it really winning?
You like that, Mr. Crab? Yep. You still have a chance to still have the 5.
Okay, here we go.
Next one on the list. Often loses things necessarily. Often loses things necessarily for tasks and activities, i.e., school materials, pencils, books, tools, wallets, keys, paperwork, eyeglasses, mobile telephones.
It's so bad that I have a constant fear that I forgot something.
A good tip from fellow ADHDers: get a tile.
Oh, yeah, like the things you put on your keys that you can press the button and it's Bluetooth.
And
Yeah, I've had
if
one.
If you can't find it, you click on it and it makes music from the tile so you can find them.
Yes, yep. I've had one before. They're fantastic.
Once you're close enough.
One thing that really helps me is, so I carry a backpack with me of just like standard things that I would always need, and I just put like an extra set of keys. Like I made an extra key and put it in there. That works for me. I also make sure that I put my stuff back in the same spot every time. Most of the time when I lose it,
it's a big thing. It's just always putting it back in the same spot
every time.
If you don't, you're like losing your mind.
I've walked out of my house without my keys, got to my car, and been like, shit. And had to go back in, and then I forgot something else. Sunglasses are the worst one for me. Forget sunglasses all the time.
Keys are the worst for me.
Yeah.
Like, I'll forget them on the table, or I'll forget them and be like, where did it take my keys off last night? And since I moved in here, I finally started putting them up on the hook.
Yeah.
Right inside the door, so I don't forget them. Or even now, I still walk all the way out to my car, which is like a whole, 12 steps.
Right.
But that's very annoying to turn
It's
around.
still annoying. Yep, especially when you're running late.
That, and then, if it's, raining or, snowing or, the weather's shitty outside, it's more fun to go all the way back inside to go find your stuff.
Right.
It was worse with my parents because I in the morning when I was leaving, I didn't want to wake everybody up by opening the garage door. So I'd go out the side door, walk all the way around this. Even with my parents, it's the driveway is so
He's drawing a picture, everybody.
the driveway comes in like this, wraps around the back. Your garage is right here. Little door, the sidewalk that comes out to the side to the house. That's the addition. And I always parked right here behind my dad. Mm-hmm. And he parked in the garage. Mm-hmm. Surprisingly, we made the garage big enough for him to fit his truck in there.
That is surprising because your dad has a big truck.
Yeah, he's like, if I'm putting a garage on here, we're making the door big enough to get my truck in there. So we made the garage a 26 by 26 garage.
Dang.
His truck is 23 feet long.
Wow.
Like, now we have a shelf up against the wall, so like you have to do the side shuffle to get past it.
Yep.
Because then the fenced-in area is like right here. And then to let the dogs out, you have to go open the door until we put the dog door in. Mm-hmm. Anyways, so I'd go all the way out on the driveway, walk all the way around, go to my truck, get in it, and be like, fuck.
Forgot my keys.
Forgot my keys.
Yep.
Yeah, so that was my life growing. Or still going.
Yeah.
Until I moved out. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Back on task.
we got off again.
Telephone's the last thing. Is often easily distracted.
Yes.
Bingo! Last one. Is often forgetful in daily activities.
Oh, 100%.
And the total for me and Sam, 6 out of 9. He made his 5.
I made the 5.
Riley, 9 out of 9. Oh man, this is a great time for the go. Oh, my phone's already on silent. Look
at you.
I wasn't even trying. I forgot to take it off silent. Okay. Hyperactivity and impulsivity. 6 or more symptoms of hyperactivity/impulsivity for children up to age 16 years, or 5 or more for adolescents age 17 years and older, and adults.
It's what's strange to me about this is like you have these categories, but they're like subcategorized into so many different things. Mm-hmm. So like, I mean, some of these could just be translated to like normal everyday things, but I think what we're trying to say is like this is a constant daily struggle. Like everybody forgets their keys, everyone gets distracted, but this is like overactive. Like these are things that happen to us all the time. It's just something you live with on a daily basis.
Well, you got to think about it like this also. Your point of view could be skewed because we grew up being ADHD.
Yeah.
So we don't know how other people... I mean, we do, but we don't. Because
right.
ADHD, I'm pretty sure, is hereditary.
That would not surprise me. My dad has the same stuff.
My mom, 100%.
Yeah.
Okay. Dun, dun, dun. Impulsivity. All right. Dun, 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 dun. Has to be present for 6 months to an extent that is disruptive and inappropriate for the person's developmental level. Numero uno. Often fidgets with or taps hands or feet or squirms in seat. Bing. Bing. 2 points for Riley and Sam.
I also have RLS, if you know what that is.
RL.
Restless leg syndrome.
I've heard about it.
It's literally if my legs are like stationary, they have to be moving like slightly, like fidgeting or like I mean, you've probably seen me do it. Like my leg will just start shaking. That's RLS.
Okay, gotcha. Next on the list: often leaves seat in situations while remaining seated is expected.
Yes.
Riley and Sam, 2 points.
But part of, I mean, like, yes, I stand up and sit down a lot, and it helps me focus, especially on stuff like when Zoom was being used more. I had to be standing up.
Yeah, I can't just sit there. And just try.
I can't do it. I tried playing D&D over online a couple times. Can't stay focused. Like I have to be doing something. Mm-hmm.
Especially when other people are going. It's super hard.
Yeah, exactly.
Or talking or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Often runs about or climbs in situations where it is not appropriate. Adolescents or adults may be limited to feeling restless. I had a hard time reading that, like, and understanding what it meant. Mm-hmm. What do you think it means?
Did it put climbing in there?
Runs about, or climbs in situations where it is not appropriate.
I guess I think it's like we were talking about. Those two things are incredibly similar, and I think this one applies more to kids than it does adults. Where, like, if you're in a conversation or something like that and you're expected to listen, you start like getting on top of something or sitting down and standing up. Like I might be doing I kind of get it because I do this sort of thing where I'll just like start pacing. I think that's a really good way of putting it.
Where like move.
Yeah, where you're just moving to be like, and you're moving to be able to pay attention to them.
Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of people understand that, and they're like, "What are you doing?" And they don't like
I'd
moving their head back and forth.
Point for you and a point for me for that one.
Yeah.
That makes more sense to me. Often unable to play or take part in leisure activities quietly.
Riley.
Sam calling peacocks.
Riley, am I ever quiet?
Riley going full 100% send.
All the time.
All the time.
So, the peacock thing, I do a perfect peacock. Like super, super good. And there's a peacock that lives across the lake from Riley.
Across the pond.
And that works out well because I'm talking about what I'm talking about later.
Yes, it does.
But the peacock does respond to me. Like, it's that good that I get a peacock to respond, and so Riley doesn't want me to get the peacock all riled up.
For my neighbor's sake, because we already have to listen to it.
Yeah,
it hasn't spoke up in a while, but it's still here.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's been here for years. How long do peacocks live?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I know that there's other birds that live. I mean, parrots live like 60 to 80 years in captivity, so I would imagine peacocks probably get like at least 20 or 30.
Crazy to me.
Yeah, in some states you have to leave parrots in your will if you have them. So if you have like an African gray or something like that, in some states you have to leave it in your will because it will likely die after you. And then people don't want to take care of them because they're grumpy after their owner dies. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, I think the best situation for that would be like a family growing up with a family, so it listens to the kids.
Well, even in Dan's case,
true.
His dad, one of our friends, his dad owns a bird, and they've been around this bird its entire life, and it still hates them.
Except for the dad,
which is typical for parrots. They mate for life in the wild, and so they usually only latch onto one thing and then act as an aggressor towards most other stimuli outside. So it works for in captivity too. They get latched onto one person, and then they see everything else around them as an aggressor. So
I feel like we should talk about animals next week because I'm curious about how's it like some animals that live like super, super long lives. Like have a high longevity. Mm-hmm. How come they can still go from like being born in like super small to like being almost full size within 5 years?
Oh yeah, I mean I can talk about that for some extent.
But then you got humans that like were born small, and it takes a long period of time.
It takes 21 to 25 years for your brain to fully develop. So you have to consider that even though you're considered an adult physically, quote unquote, your brain takes even longer to develop past that.
True.
So let's keep going.
Yep.
We're already at like 25 minutes, and we're only on the second thing here. So
there is only two things. So
okay.
Dun, 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 dun. But it has additional symptoms
right
after this. Dun, dun, dun. Is often on the go, acting as if driven by a motor. Riley to the max.
That's me too.
There is never. I mean, Sam can attest to this, and so can my girlfriend and my family. I'm never not doing something. Mm-hmm. Never.
And I think I think this one shows as one of like the quintessential signs that somebody might have ADHD is just like you will go until you burn out super hard. Like for me, I will just continue to do things until I get sick. Like, and I get like flu-like symptoms and I'm down for days. And it's literally my body saying, take a fucking break.
Yeah. And mine just makes it so like I can go to sleep anywhere.
At any time.
At any time.
On any substance. Okay.
Okay. Often talks excessively. Sam?
You didn't even have to ask me.
We were both at 4 before, weren't we?
Yeah.
I just forgot to slash you for that last one. So you're at 6. Do you think I talk excessively?
No.
No? Okay.
No.
You've beat me in this race.
No, I think
I feel like
actually,
I feel like I'm pretty sure I do. Like at work I do. Like, and my boss is like, we gotta get back to work.
yeah, okay. That's fair. That's been one of my complaints my entire professional life. Was like in many, many reviews that I've got for different jobs and whatnot. They were like, you do a good job, you do good work, your one like major flaw is that you talk too much. Like they've said that all the time.
In the right conditions, I talk too much, but you know what? I'll take that back.
I don't know if you do. I feel like you're pretty concise about things.
Pretty social, but like reserved for social.
Right.
Okay, so often blurts out an answer before a question has been completed. Right.
Oh, come on. That's not a real thing. Of course I do that. I already know the answer. I know what you're going to ask.
Often has trouble waiting their turn. Another one.
Yeah. Actually, I don't feel like that's me, but I want to.
I have the super bad mental struggle of waiting my turn.
I want to, but I was like raised so polite that it never happens to me.
I'll never like, I'll do it subconsciously.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't feel like I do that subconsciously.
Where are you now?
Uh-oh.
And the last one, often interrupts or intrudes on others, butts into conversations or games.
Yep.
So what is that?
8 and 8.
8 out of 9 for both of us.
That's pretty good. We're doing good on this test.
Unlike
most of the tests in high school.
I don't think we were supposed to do good on this test.
Well, that was something I wanted to point out was I personally feel like me having symptoms of ADHD or ADD actually helps my creative process. I feel like if I was to like fully medicate and like completely get rid of them, I would be doing a detriment to my creative process. So like it's kind of a gift and a curse where you're able to really focus on a lot of different things, but also that can be to a detriment. You know, like your default will sometimes take you too far into that. But when you're on top of your game, I feel like it helps me personally.
Gotcha. So in this next part, I just read it. It says, in addition, the following conditions must be met. Several inattentive or hyperactive impulsive symptoms were present before the age of 12.
Oh, 100%.
Additional. Check or one. Draw the line down. Sweet. Okay. Several symptoms were present in 2 or more settings, such as at home, school, work, with friends, relatives.
Yeah, school for sure, work for sure.
Not necessarily at home.
It depends on what I was doing. If it was something I wanted to be doing, then no. But if it was something that I didn't want to be doing, then 100%.
There is a clear evidence that symptoms interfere with or reduce the quality of social, school, or work functioning.
Yeah.
Yes. I feel like a doctor. About to drop
but he's not.
Drop the hammer down and
But he's not a doctor,
myself.
and we're not diagnosing.
I'm self-diagnosing.
Don't do it. Don't do it, Riley. He's doing it in his brain right now, everybody.
Oh, God. Dun, dun, dun. The symptoms are not better explained by another mental disorder such as a mood disorder, anxiety disorder, dissociative disorder, or a personality disorder. The symptoms do not happen only during the course of schizophrenia or other psychotic disorder.
Yeah. So that was one thing that I wanted to point out was maybe where like it might be different for me. Mine's so much worse when I'm having anxious episodes. Like it's definitely still there, but I also operate at a pretty high level of anxiety anyway. So like anxious episodes make all of this so much worse. Like I can't focus. I'm bored easily.
Yeah, we've run into that a couple times when we were working on the garage.
Yeah, for sure.
And we work through them.
Yeah. Yep. So like it gets worse. So that may like distance me from an actual ADHD diagnosis. It might be more of an anxiety thing, but I don't know for sure.
That could also be in addition to, not necessarily taking you away from.
Right. That's very true. It could just be ADHD and an anxiety disorder that like multiplies the symptoms and stuff like that. I don't know. We don't know. Yeah, we're not doctors again.
Okay, based on the types of symptoms, 3 kinds of presentations of ADHD can occur. Combined presentation, if enough symptoms for both criteria and instant. For the past 6 months, basically you're inattentive and hyperactive.
For at least 6 months.
That's the combination for at least for the past 6 months. You have predominantly inattentive or predominantly hyperactive. Basically saying you're more present in one or the other. Like your symptoms are more present over the other ones. Like you're still like these other symptoms are still prevalent, but let's say your excessive talking is more prevalent than all your other ones.
Yeah,
so it makes you
100%.
more hyperactive and impulsivity.
Correct. Yeah.
Versus inattentive.
Right, but I'm definitely still impulsive.
So, well, impulsive and hyperactivity isn't the same thing.
Oh, gotcha.
It's
okay.
inattentive, which is like forgetting and being spaced out and all that other stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So, I feel like we're both combination.
Right.
Dun-dun-dun-dun. Presentations may change over time as well. Ooh, diagnosing ADHD in adults. ADHD often lasts into adulthood. To diagnose ADHD in adolescents, or age 17 years or older, only 5 symptoms are needed instead of the 6 needed for younger children. Symptoms might look different at older ages. For example, in adults, hyperactivity may appear as extreme restlessness or wearing out others with their activity.
Gotcha.
And the references that they put on here is the American Psychiatric Association, Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 5th edition.
That 4th edition was missing some stuff.
Yeah, it was. and that's all I have on this, folks.
There we go. Yeah, so if you guys, like, I've said it throughout, just, like, joking, but I do really want to make a point. Like, if you feel like you're having some of these symptoms, go see a psychiatrist. Go, like, get yourself diagnosed. Because, and this isn't the case for everybody, but, and maybe this is a topic for another day, but, like, through my journey of therapy, being able to have a name to whatever you're dealing with makes it easier to beat. Like, at least it's known, right? So having a name to something really helps me overcome it, because there are systems and there are things that you can do if it's something that you know about. If it's not, like, if I was diagnosed with some unknown illness, how am I supposed to treat it? What am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to change my life? My life around that specific diagnosis. But if something has a name and it's something known and other people deal with it, there are systems that they have in place that can potentially help you. So go get yourself a diagnosis, go see a psychiatrist. I think that might be something that I won't even want to do down the road. I'm just getting back into things as far as therapy goes, so I want to, like, get that started and then potentially see a psychiatrist and get some names, you know, and then they give you systems to go by. Yeah. And not just go by any sort of, like, pseudoscience they might tell you online. So
True.
Yep.
Well,
okay.
Also having a name to it also helps you to explain it to A, your employer, B, your family. Like, if you're doing something and it's not necessarily what and they're like, why are you like this? And you're like, this is why.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've checked, and this is like all the for my case at least, all the symptoms you can have.
Right.
I click 99% of them.
Right, exactly.
So this is my diagnosis of it. But I'm not a doctor. I don't have that fancy degree to tell people what I got, what I don't.
Mm-hmm.
But it also, going out and getting diagnosed by a doctor can also help you get medicine to stay on task.
Yep.
And I know in personal, some of my personal friends who have it and they've gotten medicine for it. It helps them tremendously.
Mm-hmm.
But each to their own. I'm not
Right.
a big guy on medicine because I forget a lot of shit.
Yep. That was one of the things when I started taking anxiety meds, is I just forgot to take them all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so it never really, like, a lot of them take months to get started, to start actually working, and I just never even got to that point. So maybe I should have been more on like an ADHD sort of thing than an anxiety. I don't know. So because the very strange thing is when you're talking about anxiety versus ADHD, they can have similar symptoms, but your normal family doctor can prescribe you anxiety medication, but he cannot prescribe you ADHD medication.
Did not know
He can, but you have to get diagnosed with it first, and he's not the one that's going to give you that diagnosis. You have to go to a psychiatrist, as far as I understand.
They can do it for anxiety?
What's that?
They can do it for anxiety, though?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my normal family doctor prescribed me anxiety meds.
I feel like those are both, like, mental.
Yeah, I thought that was a little strange, too.
How can you do one without being able to do the other?
Because you don't have to be diagnosed with anxiety. You can just tell them you have it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, there probably is actual anxiety disorders that can be diagnosed, but if you just go into your doctor and say, I'm particularly anxious, he can prescribe you whatever.
Gotcha.
So, okay. Is that all you got on that one?
That's all I got on that one.
All right. So, we are going to go ahead and get into my topic.
What's the time?
We're at 36 minutes.
So, we are stopping the podcast. I am cutting you off at 1 hour and 7 minutes, so we can wrap it up by 1 hour and 10.
Okay. So the reason that we have a time limit on this is because I could talk about this shit for hours. And the funny thing is, so what I'm going to be talking about is Doctor Who. And I want to go on a little rant here. I'm going to tell you that I'm getting up on top of this soapbox, all right? So I am pretty nerdy. I think you know this about me.
Yeah.
However, I refuse to be a part of almost any fandom. And there's a big reason for that. When you look at fandoms and communities around particular TV shows and video games and movies and that kind of thing, D&D, whatever, right? They have these like fandoms. The conversations in them can be so polarizing and toxic.
True.
And Doctor Who definitely has that, especially right now, because what we'll talk about is the writer right now is pretty bad, and some people like it, but it's very low comparatively to the last writers that they had. So like the conversations get so toxic and so you're on one side or the other, and there's no in between. And I hate that sort of conversation. It's the exact reason, literally the whole reason I've never watched Rick and Morty like religiously, is because of how bad the fan base can be and how like polarizing they are with their opinions. I just really don't think that it's a good conversation. And also, like, a writer and a team that makes something made it in their specific art style, their form, their version of creativity, right? And they set it out for you to enjoy. It's not, you can't change it, right?
Yeah.
As a community, you guys can't change their creative process. You can't change how they decided to make it. So I really don't see a point in arguing about stuff. You either like it or you don't. And you just kind of, I'm sort of one of those people that I just turn my brain off and let somebody else tell me a story during a movie or a single player game or something like that. So like when we're talking about like nerdy fandoms and things like that, that's why I don't really consider myself a part of a community or part of a fandom. Mm-hmm. So just something to throw out there. So Doctor Who. So I've been watching Doctor Who since I was literally like 5 years old. Mm-hmm. Super long time. My dad watched it on PBS when he was in college and things like that. And the show has been running since 1963.
That long?
It's been so we'll get to it, but there was a phase where it kind of like was in a weird limbo of whether the show was going to come back or not. They weren't making active episodes, but they were still making content for it. But yeah, as far as an active entity and property, it's been going since 1963. So it started out with William Hartnell. The funny thing about early Doctor Who, and I love this description, I heard it in a video I was watching on it once, is when you look at old BBC work as opposed to new BBC work, BBC standing for British Broadcasting Company, you can tell the older stuff is very inspired by theater. And that's what makes Doctor Who so interesting, because at the time you had like Star Trek. Once you get a little farther into it, you start getting like Battlestar Galactica, Star Wars, things like that, which are definitely more like cinematic focused, more visually focused and things like that, telling a story through visuals. But theater is all about character, building up scenes, things like that. And Doctor Who is very, very close to that, very early Doctor Who is very theater focused. But it's interesting because it's a sci-fi, and sci-fi is not really a genre that's covered very much in theater. It is occasionally, but just not usually. So William Hartnell started in 1963 to 1966. So the show really wasn't expected to do that well at the time, and people loved it. It was, it was corny, it was cheesy, but it was like a fun. Most theater is corny and cheesy.
Yeah.
It's a very fun like romp into a sci-fi world of like new characters and things like that. And there really isn't too much to talk about with the William Hartnell because it's like the start of everything. One thing to talk about is the Daleks, which is it's spelled weird. It's Daleks, but some people will say Darleks. There's no R in there, so it's Daleks technically. But they're a very crazy design. They almost look kind of like a salt and pepper shaker on wheels, and they have like a little tube that comes out of them that shoots a laser and stuff. Yeah. You've probably seen media and stuff for them. But that started in the original. It was like the second series. Another thing about Doctor Who that's kind of interesting is up until the more recent iteration of Doctor Who, it was very series focused. So you'd have chunks of like 4 to 12 episodes that would tell one specific story, and then it would move on to the next story. So are you familiar with the term anthology series? So an anthology series is kind of like a Black Mirror, where you could watch any of the episodes out of order and they don't really relate to each other. Besides the characters that come up in Doctor Who, I would say it's very like pseudo-anthology. You could watch any of the series and you wouldn't have to watch the ones before it to actually get into it. So you could really start anywhere. But William Hartnell was very old. He was probably in his early 70s by 66, and so he really wasn't going to be acting much anymore, and he was getting ready to leave the show. And so they were like, well, how do we continue? This is the face of our show. And they came up with a brilliant idea. What if we made it so the character could regenerate faces? And basically what they did is they came up with a storyline beat that the Doctor has two hearts and comes from a planet where if he dies, his second heart like kicks in and they regenerate into a new look, like a new person with the same memories, but like different personality traits, different style choices, things like that into a new character. And it turned out brilliantly. So Patrick Troughton was the one who came after him, and William Hartnell was kind of your like grandpa that likes to pick on you sort of vibe was his thing. He was picking on everybody the whole time. He is kind of like a mischievous sort of person. The big difference and what made it really cool is Doctor Who was always going to change as it changed characters. Like the vibe of the show was going to change. So Patrick Troughton played a more quietly confident Doctor, but who came off as cowardly. So if you like watch the William Hartnell and then you go into Patrick Troughton, you can tell. Okay, so William Hartnell would face problems head on, but Troughton would kind of like hang back, act a little cowardly, and then he'd come up and hit you at the end of the series because he knew what was going on the whole time. So he was kind of like gathering information, letting things happen, and then at the end he would sell you on what his plan was. So that was really cool to watch. Patrick Troughton also has some of the best companions, which is a big part of Doctor Who as well, is their companions really kind of matter. The show can be make or break with good companions. And I think Patrick Troughton had great ones. The ones that they started with William Hartnell were fine, but they were just fine. They're not great. But like I specifically remember Zoe and Jamie, and because it's a show about time and space and you can go anywhere, Zoe came from a futuristic space station and Jamie was a 13th century Scot. So he wore a kilt around the whole time. It was great. And so it's kind of cool how you can kind of just like tell these weird like time travel stories and that they come from different places and things like that. So after Patrick Troughton, we have John Pertwee. And the interesting thing about John Pertwee was, on the back end of things, the budget was getting cut a little bit because, if I remember correctly, that's when they were switching over to color, when it was mandatory to start switching over to color in the UK and the US.
Yeah.
And so they had to make some budget cuts because they had to buy all these new cameras. And so how were they going to translate these budget cuts into the story of Doctor Who? And it was that the Doctor got locked down to Earth by his race of people called the Time Lords. So they just decided, all right, he's going to be stuck on Earth the whole time. And so they were able to reuse the same shot locations over and over a lot cheaper and do multiple episodes at the same time in one place just to save money. Yeah. So it was a really interesting story beat. John Pertwee was really cool. He was... each Doctor has their own style. Hartnell was very traditionally like suit jacket sort of person, 60s kind of look. Troughton was kind of looked like a disheveled. His style is told as like Chaplin, like Charlie Chaplin. Had a very distraught bow tie off to the side, kind of looked disheveled and things like that. Pertwee was very theatrical. He had a very like flowing look to him, like his shirt had like a half cape and stuff like that. And the Doctor drove a car during this part. It was interesting. He called it Bessie. It was a really old, like, I don't know what specifically it was, but it was fun to watch. I like Pertwee because he gets in with the British military a lot. There's like a special unit that's supposed to deal with like alien threats and stuff like that, and he's like their science officer, and so you're dealing with like, it's almost like the Doctor Who version of MASH. It's kind of it's kind of fun. It's like MASH if there was aliens that they're fighting all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was very interesting. I think that's my dad's favorite is Pertwee. It's not mine. We'll get into my favorite. So besides that, not too much to tell about Pertwee. I don't have a whole lot to say about old Doctor Who overall, besides its stylistic choices and things like that. Just because it is very theater. You either like it or you don't. I can't tell you if you're going to like these stories because I don't know how you take theater. And they're old. It's a very old show that was not, and I mean, like, special effects is not where it was now. It looks cheesy. And they do have some good designs, like some stuff that aged really well, but most of the time, no. So, we'll move on to my favorite old Doctor. So there's old Doctor Who and new Doctor Who. And my favorite old Doctor is Tom Baker. So Tom Baker's the longest running Doctor. He went from 74 to 81. And he had a scarf and he had like curly hair and a hat that he wore most of the time. And he had just a very fun personality. He, sometimes he'd approach things with confidence. Sometimes he'd spend most of it running away. You never really knew what Tom Baker was going to do. Highly suggest if you're going to watch it, watch Tom Baker's series, The Pyramid of Mars. Still genuinely scary. It is sold as one of the most like horror-themed episodes of Doctor Who. While it is considered technically sci-fi / horror, it's not really ever that scary. Pyramid of Mars sucks. Not that it sucks, it's great, but it just like sucks for everybody involved in the story. And like it was very like end of the world sort of shit, which was pretty cool. Tom Baker also had the best, my second favorite companion, which was Sarah Jane Smith, who was a reporter, very Lois Lane type, but she was very headstrong and just a great fit for Tom Baker. They worked so well together. And I think they did like 6 years of Tom Baker's run with Sarah Jane Smith, which is, I think, still the longest a companion's ever been a part of it. So we'll run through these other ones really quickly. The show starts to lose quality afterwards. So it gains quality and loses quality. It gets better special effects, but the special effects get less and less because the show, the owner of BBC at the time really hated sci-fi, and he wanted to push more like true crime, soap operas, stuff like that. And so he starts giving the budget for Doctor Who less and less. So in the last 3 series, you have Peter Davidson, Colin Baker, and Sylvester McCoy. And that ran from 82 to 89. So they had 3 doctors in like 7 years, which was unprecedented at the time. And they were just like filtering them out and moving them on and things like that. I like Sylvester McCoy as a doctor of that series the best, but he had the shortest run because the show got canceled in 89. It's Sylvester McCoy is very fun. I like Ace, who's his companion in most of that series. But yeah, the quality of the show was definitely starting to drop, and it was dropping because the budget was getting worse and they were under more restraints. But the guy who was in charge used that as an excuse. Well, your show's dropping in quality, therefore I'm going to drop the budget. It's just kind of a vicious cycle of things. So it eventually shut down in 89. So after that, Doctor Who went into a limbo phase where the show wasn't on the air. They were showing like reruns and stuff. But it was still being actively run in side content. So there is a multitude of audio podcast style, like radio theater sort of deal with Doctor Who that happened in this time frame, and it still goes on. They still do this. It got so popular during that time frame in the 90s where they were doing like audio stories that they still do it to this day. And so that's kind of how they kept it alive. There was a magazine that went out. They had Doctor Who was one of the first like Comic-Con sort of things, like conferences. That was one of the first ones to ever hold a conference as far as like fandom goes. And there was a movie that came out in 96, and that was Paul McGann, and it was interesting. It's as if Doctor Who got Hollywood, like went Hollywood. It was a very Marvel-ish story plot, very, very like what you would expect of. You know what it kind of strikes me as, weirdly enough, is kind of Christmas Vacation-ish. Not the humor, but just like the pacing and the plot and things like that. And it was just a very strange feel for Doctor Who at the time. It was kind of that halfway point where BBC was starting to move more into like making sure that they do special effects and making things more cinematic overall because they had the resources to do it. But it wasn't quite to the same level that they do it now. So it was like this limbo between what would be like theater, quote unquote, and cinematic. And it's very strange. It's not very good. I don't really suggest anybody goes and watches the movie because it also like breaks some rules for Doctor Who, even though it's technically still canonical, quote unquote. But then in 2005, they brought the show back. And what's interesting about bringing the show back is the writers and the team that was behind bringing the show back was fans their whole life. Since the show had been running since 63, these are kids that grew up watching the show every week on TV. So Russell T Davies is the lead writer for the new series coming back. And the doctor that they bring in is Christopher Eccleston. Eccleston was a great doctor. I really liked him, but apparently from the 3rd episode on, they knew they were only going to keep him for a year. He had a lot of creative differences. Eccleston himself was a Doctor Who fan, but there was just like creative differences when moving in away from like the theater sort of side of things. And you can definitely tell that the special effects are getting better. But New Doctor Who had a totally different vibe. It was very like into its time. It was very 2000s in the same way that like Supernatural is. Sort of deal. In fact, I would not be surprised if they pulled some inspiration from shows like Buffy, like Supernatural, things like that. It had that sort of like cheesy 2000s, really over the top sort of vibe to it. And it's still really fun, but it is cheesy for sure. That's the thing about Doctor Who that is why I don't like watch it consistently as an adult is boy, oh boy, you gotta be in a mood to watch something cheesy. There's almost never a time where it's like, wow, this is really cinematically, like, objectively good. It's normally pretty cheesy.
Yeah.
But Eccleston was pretty good. Rose Tyler was his companion for the time that he was in it. And it just brought a whole new light to the show. Like I said, I think the best way to put it is, like, put it up against Supernatural or Buffy, except sci-fi instead of, like, Monster of the Week kind of deal. So after Christopher Eccleston, and this is a name that you will probably recognize, is David Tennant. David Tennant was a theater actor in the UK at the time. He really hadn't made any of his big breaks. He's a super, super good actor, but he played the Doctor from 2005 to 2010. And this is really where the show started to get its audience back and then grow even past that. They kind of came back into their own over time. And the story started to make more sense. They were getting better at writing the story that they had made. And it sort of started to fall away from that feeling of Buffy and more into, like, a cinematic... I don't really have anything that I could really reference for the Tenet era as far as, like, time frame or, like, other shows that you could reference it towards. It just was very unique. It was very fun. Tennant's a very lively actor. You know, he likes to keep people guessing as far as what he's going to do.
Yeah.
And his run as the Doctor was just so much fun because of that. So he ran for 5 years, which is a pretty good long time for Doctor Who. Usually their time frame is about 3 to 4 years.
2 or 3 years.
Yeah, 2 to 4 years typically. And he's still a lot of people's favorites. I really love David Tennant. So the Russell T Davies era, I'm not a huge fan of the writing of the show. I think that the vision that they were going for was really good, but I think that their writing on the individual levels is really lacking. But that's just my personal take. I love the characters in it. Rose Tyler played for a little bit. They also had Martha, who came in the 3rd season, then Donna in the 4th season. And then they had a section where they still had Tennant on contract for the rest of the season, which the 4th season was a little short. And so they have what's called the special episodes, which is Tennant's send-off. And those are some of the best episodes of Doctor Who. You just get to see pure David Tennant acting in these crazy scenarios. They also have the guy from... You ever seen Hot Fuzz or... what is that movie? It's a zombie UK movie. It's a joke zombie movie. Can't remember. Anyway, they have that guy play the Master, who's like the antithesis of the Doctor. And those are some of the best episodes. So good. Lots of fun. But yeah, they moved on from David Tennant, who they got rid of David Tennant because of his play in Doctor Who, he's starting to get bigger and bigger roles. And now David Tennant's like a household name. Like, he's in Marvel, he's in Harry Potter.
Okay.
He plays Barty Crouch Jr.
Oh, yeah.
Mad Eye Moody's like the one who took over Mad Eye Moody for a little bit. Yeah, he plays...
What did he play in Marvel?
In Jessica Jones. The Nemesis in Jessica Jones.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Never watched that series.
Oh, okay. I've seen like a little bit of it, like 2 or 3 episodes. But yeah, he plays in some Marvel stuff. He's in all sorts of different things. He was in some Broadway to movie, but I can't remember what it is off the top of my head. But he's all over the place now.
I got you.
He just got too big for the show. That's really what it ended up being. So we have coming into place, which is my favorite Doctor, and man, we're running out of time. I gotta go quick. Matt Smith. I love Matt Smith. And I love Matt Smith as an actor, and I love that the writing team, Russell T Davies, retired from the show after this. And Stephen Moffat took over. Stephen Moffat was the writer for Sherlock. I don't know if you've ever seen that. Sherlock is known for its overarching narratives that it tells over an entire season that all comes into episodes at the end. They've done that in Doctor Who, for sure, especially in the newer series, but not to the level that Stephen Moffat was able to do. Excellent. Sherlock's a really well-written show, a lot of people say. I haven't seen too much of it myself. I know some like story beats and things like that, but as far as writing, people really like it. And he took that to Doctor Who and dialed it up to 11. It was absolutely amazing. Season 5 was super fun. Season 6, however, I think is the best season of Doctor Who ever. It starts off with the Doctor dying. In the first episode, they kill him off. And you kind of know that it's coming up to something at the end of the series. And almost every single episode in the entire season relates back to, okay, the Doctor's going to die. The Doctor's going to die. The Doctor's going to die. And then in the end, they just give you this twist that's so fun and amazing to watch. And they did a really good job. My gripe with season 5 is that the ending was kind of like, I don't know if that makes sense, but season 6 makes perfect sense at the end of it, and every single episode had a little key to how it was going to work. Another thing that we need to talk about with Matt Smith is Amy Pond and Rory are two of the actors that play in that. So Karen Gillan plays Nebula in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Okay.
She got her start on Doctor Who, or at least her big break was Doctor Who. The best companions in the entire show. So my favorite Doctor and my favorite companions in the entire show.
Who she looks like outside of her whole...
Oh, outside of Nebula? She looks so different. I didn't even realize it was Karen Gillan to begin with. But yeah, just in combination with the good writing, the good acting, and everything was super fun. Like it bled into each other.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's who I thought it was.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
So the thing with Matt Smith is, even if I don't feel like watching quote-unquote Doctor Who, I can still watch Matt Smith because I can objectively tell you that those 3 years that he played were like objectively good the whole time through. It was a perfect level of cinematics, storytelling, all this kind of thing. I still watch Matt Smith on a regular basis, and I will go back through and watch all of it over and over, even though I don't always go back and watch all these other ones. So Matt Smith was replaced with Peter Capaldi in 2014 to 2017. I've only seen the first episode of Peter Capaldi. I have a really hard time getting back into the show after Matt Smith because it sort of feels like it was the best it was going to be. Moffat is still the writer, and I've heard that some of the overarching storylines are really fun, and I really do need to go back and watch them, but I just really haven't yet because Matt Smith just is so good. It really hits all the notes for me. They replaced Amy and Rory, which were my favorite companions, with Clara, who's fine for most of it, but she's not my favorite by any means. And it just didn't necessarily feel the same, even though I do think that Peter Capaldi is a great actor. He's actually been in Doctor Who as side characters before, and then he got hired on as the actor who played the Doctor. So I don't really have much to say about Capaldi just because I haven't seen it. Now, I have gone and watched a fair bit of episodes and a lot of talking points for Jodie Whittaker, who is the current Doctor. The first time the Doctor's a female.
Yeah.
Which was really cool. I have absolutely no qualms with that. I think that makes total sense. They've said for years that Time Lords can be either male or female. And so they got a woman to come and play the Doctor, which I think is awesome. However, Chris Chibnall is a terrible writer. An absolutely shite writer. So bad. He tries to include these social justice conversations and make Doctor Who into a social commentary, which it has been in the past and done a good job with, but he is so bad at making them that because of the way that he puts it in your face and then he gets something wrong. And it's so annoying.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I feel if you're going to make a social commentary, do as much research as you possibly can. And you can tell that he thinks he's hot shit just because he's writing for Doctor Who. And it's really taking the show down with them. So one of the things with the early new series, so Christopher Eccleston and David Tennant, everything's really campy.
Yeah.
And then as you get into Matt Smith and Peter Capaldi, things get less campy because of the writing with it.
Okay, what do you mean by campy?
You know how Buffy's like really corny and cheesy all the time? And so supernatural, where it's just like in your face about stuff, and it's just like, okay, that doesn't really happen, but I can buy it because it's TV. That's campy.
Okay.
So, in Doctor Who definitely felt that way as well in the early series. I
I feel like campy is acceptable for a certain time frame, especially in the early 2000s and 90s when you have Buffy and Supernatural, because we're still learning how to do overarching storylines. Like that's more of a modern thing in cinematic history, right? And so campiness is acceptable to a certain level, and it can be a choice. When it's not something that's chosen and it just comes out as campy, then it's bad. And I really don't like that they've gone back to campy. Gotcha. The characters are super flat in the new series. None of them have like real personalities. It's all just to kind of like, because that was the thing about the companions in Doctor Who, is they help build up the Doctor because they're actual characters. In the new series, I don't feel like any of them are actual characters. They just literally exist to build up the Doctor, which makes it feel like built on sand, sort of, you know? And then when the Doctor fails to make something exciting or like sell a scene, there's no one else there to
help pick it back up.
Yeah, exactly. So, gotcha. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of where Doctor Who is going right now, not because of like the choice of Doctor or because of the settings that they're doing or anything like that. It's just because of the character writing for the most part. But that's where we're at with Doctor Who. As far as my recommendations, I really suggest you watch Tom Baker's Pyramid of Mars or season 6 of the new series. Okay. Those are probably the best to get into. The audiobooks are great, don't get me wrong, but that's like when you're super into it and you've probably watched most of the episodes that you can. One little side note that I do want to tell about the early Doctor Who, so William Hartnell, Patrick Troughton, and a little bit of John Pertwee, is back in the day they didn't do a lot of saving film. They didn't like store them properly, and so over time they would start to deteriorate because they didn't think that anybody was going to want to watch them again. And so there is a big push in the Doctor Who community to find all of these old episodes or recreate them as best they can. They've done some animation and things like that, or they have like just the audio or something like that, to find every episode of the show and put it back together, because there are whole sections of these early Doctors that just are lost to time, supposedly. So they're trying to find, they have interviewed people about what the episodes were about, and then they created an animation off of that to recreate the episode.
Jeez.
Crazy projects, dude.
That's pretty cool.
It is pretty neat. It's kind of like it's kind of like an archivist sort of thing. Like they're going back and trying to archive them as best as possible.
Yeah. Kind of preserve the whole history of the show.
Exactly. Especially considering this is the longest running sci-fi show of all time. What is it? 63 to we're at 2021, so that's like 60 almost 60 years, 58 years, something like that.
58 years.
Yeah, it's been running for 58 years. So that is my take on Doctor Who, and I was damn close on time.
Yes, you were. You were
I
very
was
close.
really close.
You did pull that last part together pretty well.
Yep. So there you go. That's Doctor Who and my complicated relationship with it.
Yes, it is.
Yes. So we are going to end there. We will see you all next week. What do you want to talk about? Do we know yet?
I said something about animals earlier.
Yeah, animals would be really cool. We had also discussed maybe doing an episode where we have each other like listen to some songs and then give our thoughts on it. I think that would be really fun. So
let's give each other like a list of like 5 or 6 songs to listen to.
Yeah,
come back next week and discuss them.
Yeah, I think that'll be fun. All right, we are going to end that there. We might do those topics. We might do something completely different. Who knows?
You never know.
This is ADHD Pizza, and we'll see you guys next time.
Oh boy. There's 3 flies.
There's 3 flies now.
It's a fly orgy on the game.
Bye!
I think I like it how it is.